Jack Peat, and I am the president and co-founder of Abstrax Tech and Abstrax Hops.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about your story, but just to kind of grab everybody right off the bat, tell me kind of elevator overview about what it is you guys do and kind of what you bring to the industry.
Yeah, Abstrax Tech is where we started. We're originally from California, here in Southern California, and we started as licensed cannabis manufacturers. And so it took us about 2 years to build and get through all the red tape of permitting and processing, where we could actually start extracting cannabis. And in the, roughly 2 years, we started consulting with other groups, and through that got pulled into a number of projects. We built another Type 7 manufacturing lab in Coachella, and then a second one in Linwood near Compton area. And, again, just through those interactions, started asking ourselves, well, what makes us different from any other manufacturer? And it really came down to Kevin Kobe, our CSO, now our CEO, his experience right out of university. He was an organic chemist and went into a testing lab and was testing cannabis for potency and pesticides, but also its terpene, its aromatic compounds. And he quickly learned a lot about these different compounds and got pulled into, a brand that wanted him to formulate a terpene blend for their vape cart. And at that time, it was a pretty novel product. There weren't a lot of these vape carts on the market. Cannabis vape carts were just now emerging. And he, quickly got pulled in that company, and I think they won over 20 cannabis cups with his terpene blends. And so, we were just thinking through all our business plan and, what makes us different. And it really was his unique experience creating these flavor and aromas that replicate cannabis. And so we decided to build a website and start selling these things online. And within a couple months, we were at one of our biggest trade shows called MJ BizCon in Las Vegas. And we were selling these, and it quickly became the business. And through that, we started to double down and reinvest in the R&D of creating these flavors from cannabis. And we invested in what's called the GC Cross GC, and it's a two-dimensional gas chromatograph. And that helped us discover a lot of these unique compounds within cannabis and, later on into hops and other natural products. But really what that does, a one-dimensional gas chromatograph shows you the peaks and valleys. And a two-dimensional gas chromatograph is like a helicopter flying above that peak. So you can see what's lying behind it. And it's important because, one peak of delimiting, for example, it's very strong and it might look like just, one compound. But when you fly over that, there's actually 30, 40, 50 other flavor compounds that are hiding behind that peak that you would have missed. And so on average, with cannabis, we're seeing, 300 to 500 aroma compounds, not cannabinoids or anything else, just aroma compounds. And, half of those we've roughly been able to discover, but the other half, just have never been discovered, haven't been identified, and just aren't readily available for you to just pick up off the shelf and grab and use. And so a few of those, we've been able to nail down, or the really ethereal sulfur thiol compounds, which in the beer industry, they know very well what these thiol compounds are, and they're traditionally known as, off-putting, not a great thing to have in your beer, but in cannabis, it's quite the opposite. If you don't have those, you're missing a lot of the freshness and the luster that comes with a fresh bag of OG Kush, for example. That's packed full of, these sulfur thiol compounds, and they're so light and ethereal. They're found in parts per quadrillion, right? I mean, so a typical gas chromatograph has a hard time picking these things up and discovering them. And we have an actual sulfur detector on our gas chromatograph that picks this up. And again, it's found in such small concentration, but has a huge impact on the overall aroma and flavor of cannabis. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson we've learned over the years of doing all this research, whether it's with hops or cannabis or any other natural product. It's these really light and ethereal, hard to find compounds that had this huge overall impact on the flavor and aroma. And if you're missing these key ingredients, you're missing a big part of the picture when it comes to this.
I think you actually blew my mind, because a lot of times you're right, we don't talk about this enough. And from my experience being 20 years in craft beer, I ran beer schools and tasting dinners and all this stuff. And we talked about the neurogastronomy and the hop complexities. I went to Siebel Institute, got a master of beer styles, did the Cicerone stuff. I'm going to admit right now, I didn't even know, because we're so busy pushing the product out and getting the product moving. I didn't realize. So I'm going to be ignorant in public here. So the way that we love hops and how they can bring out tropical notes and citrus notes and different things like that, when you properly do the investigation, we can do the same type of thing in the cannabis side.
Yeah, absolutely. Our first product for the brewers was a base extract. It's a CO2 extract, which is not that great, to be quite honest. It's missing a lot of the top notes. And so what we did was add those back in with botanical top notes. And we call this the Omni profile. And it basically allows us to emulate any different varietal you can imagine, which is cool for the brewers, because again, year over year, what we've heard from the brewers is like Citra from 2007, just can't find it anymore. It keeps getting worse. It's losing its luster. And so with this Omni profile, we can now lock in exactly what that strain is, whatever that day is that we test it, and we can basically Jurassic Park it for the rest of our life, right? And keep it that same consistent flavor forever. And so that's another cool thing that we can do with the Omni product. But we started doing the quantum extracts, which is just pure hop extract. And what we started finding was that, people's shelf stability actually went up. And it's a lot to do with, these bad sulfur compounds I mentioned, right?
Yeah.
That you get from the vegetable mass of a whole hop cone or even a T90 pellet. There's a lot of lipids and waxes and just chlorophyll that transfers into the beer and can quickly convert over time and spoil your beer. So the less of that you put into your beer, the longer it can survive, basically. And with our quantum extract, we're really just stripping the aromatic compounds off the plant material, and we're leaving behind a lot of the chlorophyll and the fats and the lipids. And what that does is gives you all those bright, fruity aromas that you love, and leaves behind all the bad, schlup that ends up, spoiling your beer really, really fast.
I think every distributor and retailer that watches and listens to this show just perked up when you said it actually extends the shelf life of the beer.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, for breweries that are shipping across state lines or even, overseas, a few months, that adds up to a huge ROI. And there's other cost savings I can go into as well. But,
yeah, I want to get more into your story, but I'm going to nerd out with you offline, and I want to invite everybody to kind of realize that's just the tip of the iceberg of what Jack and them do. So I want you to get a lot of feedback and some inbound from this. But talk to me real quick before we get to your story, because now you piqued me again with the craft beer things. So with the beer, a lot of people don't realize when you brew and I'm not a brewer by trade, I'm on the other stuff, but when you brew the beer and you have the hops gives the liquid taste. And then you put hops in the finishing towards the end to get the aromatics. Mm-hmm. Is that a process that's overlooked with how hemp beverages are produced today as an enhancement that could be a replicable process that's worked with beer?
For hemp, you mean specifically?
Yeah, for hemp specifically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with hemp, the problem with hemp is it inherently is bitter, right? The extract is very bitter, and it can make it very difficult to make it palatable, to be quite honest. And so you got to use either a lot of sugars or mouthfeel bitter blockers to mask a lot of that. And so, yes, there's a lot of techniques you can use. And, I think on our side, we've developed a lot of really cool tech to help, combat that bitterness and create a better tasting hemp beverage. And we have a number of flavors that range not just from beer flavors, but there's obviously a lot of cannabis flavors we're really good at. We even have a lot of these Sky Farm flavors that are just the most aromatic, just in your face fruit flavors you can imagine. And the cool thing about them is, they don't have a lot of sugar in them. There's actually zero sugar. There's zero fillers. It's literally just the top notes that you would want to get. And when you're making a beverage and you're using purees, whether it's in a hemp beverage or in a beer, it comes with a lot of pitfalls too, right? Number one, your puree might taste good this year and the next year is totally different. So you get a lot of inconsistency there. Sugars, making anything with a sugar, you can get, especially in alcohol, you get like that post fermentation. So dealing with your CO2 content, and you can have beers exploding or beverages popping, or your aromatics might get burnt off too from the CO2 that gets burnt from all the digestion of the sugar and the yeast. So it's a tough balance when you're using purees. And again, like our Sky Farm flavors really help drive these just really fresh, true to type fruit flavors. So I would recommend that with any hemp beverage, and yeah, it's a combination of bitter blockers and sugars in your recipe, right? It's a tough one to crack, to be honest, the hemp thing.
And that's the reason I asked was a lot of times we think of it like it's just producing twisted tea. You take this, you put it in the closet, you pull it back out a day later, and you're good to go to sell.
Right.
And I think I like to be able to show people that the science behind what goes on inside of things. Now, this is again me thinking in real time, and this is part of the joy of this podcast. If I was to I love Durban Poison, that's one of my favorite strains. If I wanted to make a drink, are you the type of people or is this a thing now where people will take the flavoring of a cannabis and then put it into the hemp side of things?
100%. Yeah. In fact, that's kind of how we got pulled into the beer industry in the beginning. These cannabis and hops are cousins of each other, and they actually share a lot of the same aroma compounds. And so our cannabis blends, they almost emulsify beautifully into a beer product, right? And it's interesting because we've spent a lot of time perfecting our hop extracts, and I think we've done a great job, no doubt. But people in the beer industry are continually winning awards with our cannabis terpene blends. And it's hilarious to us all internally because we're like, man, we want to see more people winning with the hop extracts. But, it's like these cannabis extracts, they really do add a third dimension to the beer, and it just adds this unique aroma that you even can get it as soon as you start seeing that beer being poured out the tap. It can just engulf the whole room, and then when you go put it up to your nose, it's just a whole different experience. Getting the sensory notes off your nose, and then tasting it. It's really unique for sure.
I remember when New Belgium Brewing Company used to be a client of ours, and I remember when they came out with Hemperor, and I feel like that sent shockwaves through, because I remember when we couldn't carry it because of some law in our state and all that stuff. But I remember going to other states where they had it, and exactly what you just said. It was one of the first beers in my experience when they poured that, and then it sat at that bar. The wafting of that aroma just had everybody looking around who the hell smoking? Everybody thought somebody was smoking in the middle of the bar, and it was just it was perfect. To have a legal product that incited that response, that physical response from people.
Yeah, and that was like a Durban Poison, more like a Jack Herrera type too.
So. Yeah, I think it was a Jack. It was a Jack. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll go to your story after one more. Sorry, you got me because you got the beer and the parallels, and I need to say this, and I want this on camera. So you and I are in the same boat, where we're looking back at this infighting of alcohol and cannabis and hemp as one of the most silliest things in the world, that they can't see how well they can grow together.
Right. Yeah. And it's true. And that's why, it's cool. We've been able to create these cannabis blends that are TTB approved. And, I'm sure people have worked with a TTB in the past know it's not that easy. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And so, yeah, you can be rest assured, like all our cannabis blends are TTB approved and, ready to use in any kind of alcohol, which is a cool, unique product in itself, right? I mean, people can't believe it when they smell it and they're like, there's no real cannabis in here. Like, what's happening? Like, this can't be real. But again, it comes back to our R&D and research and how we've just been able to pinpoint and discover all these different compounds. And it's helped us create these really dynamic blends that, some of these have 80 to 120 different ingredients. So that we're trying to get to that 300 to 500 mark, which is naturally found in the plant. But like I said, half those don't even exist naturally in nature, which is pretty unique.
So take me back timeline wise. Now we're going to jump into your story. Like, what year are you when you guys started the cannabis in California before Abstrax?
I mean, to be quite honest, I've been selling weed since I was like 15 years old.
We're together on that. It's water under the bridge at this point.
Really. My parents can co-sign that. I got caught when I was a freshman in high school selling weed, and it definitely, left its mark on me. But I think early on, I just realized, it resonated with me. I enjoy it more than I enjoy alcohol, to be quite honest. Especially in my later years, it's just healthier for me and my lifestyle, to be quite honest. And I think you're seeing that across the board. As more and more states become legal, alcohol use is definitely going down. 10% on average is what I'm seeing. And so yeah, it's been a part of my life from early on, and something that's helped me personally and financially, to be quite honest. But it's I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I think this plant has kind of helped me with that. And prior to this, I was in the swimming pool industry, and so we built pools, remodeled pools, and serviced pools. And we had a retail store. We had an online retail store. I mean, anything pools you can think of. And we ran that for 10 years and sold that company to a nice gentleman named Will, who's still in business. His company is called Vivo Pools and Vivo Aquatics. At that time, he just had Vivo Pools, and when he acquired our company, we started a whole new company with him called Vivo Aquatics. And that was part of the deal when he purchased our company, was that we had to work for him for 2 years to get the earnout. And through that, we started Vivo Aquatics, which was basically servicing the commercial swimming pool industry and properties that had 10, 20, 100 pools on their property. And we took these chemical controllers and put them on their pools, and basically built the website, and they could see all these controllers live, and it would email them whenever a pool fell out of calibration. And it was a big deal for the pool industry, especially in like Las Vegas, where there's a lot of injuries from pool chemistry, believe it or not. I think we've all seen the Hard Rock pools back in the day, and I've personally seen it go from crystal clear in the morning to just milk white in the afternoon, and nobody's leaving to go to the bathroom, right? They're all just in the pool all day long, and I'm pretty sure we can all put together what they're doing in that pool, and it's gross. And so, the health department required a director of engineering to basically test the pool chemistry every hour, on the hour, which is a lot of labor. I mean, especially when you have multiple bodies of water. I mean, it takes a lot of labor. And so with our controllers, we basically got the health department of Vegas to agree to only have somebody check the body of water one time a day and calibrate it against our machines. And so the ROI was months. And we were putting these controllers on, every body of water we could for the NGM properties. I mean, we did even some work on the Bellagio fountain, the Mirage fountain, Cosmo, the Aria, the Vadara, MGM, all of them. I was traveling a lot, going to Vegas, all over California, even Hawaii, servicing, these Sheratons and Marriotts and Ritz Carltons and St. Regis's, all these big corporations that have multiple bodies of water. It quickly made a lot of sense for them, and the ROI was there. And so, I was doing that, and my 2 years was up. And
How old are you? And then what year is this right now?
This is from 2014 to 2016. And so right at the end of 2016, my 2 years were up. I've been working a lot. I remember I had about 2-3 months straight. I didn't stop working all weekends, days. Like, I was just grinding. And I was in Park City, Utah, working at a mountainside right on the bottom of the ski lift, beautiful resort. And I was in the chemical room where a chlorine line had split, and there's bleach all over the room. And my taste of smell, everything's gone. I'm just in this horrible environment, and I'm fixing these lines, hanging in these rafters, and my phone kept ringing. And I climb down from the rafters, and I pick it up, and it's this director of engineering from a Ritz Carlton in downtown LA. And he's screaming at me, telling me that, our company is going to get sued. My unborn kids are going to get sued. And that our chemical feeder had overfed into a jacuzzi that bleached a billionaire's ball sack. Literally what he told me. And I'm just like, oh,
yeah, but don't they pay for that now? Isn't that something they're paying for now? Times have changed, like,
right? I know.
You did them a service.
That was free of charge, but that was a big deal. I'd spent a couple years building that relationship, and he quickly just threw me under the bus.
Oh.
And that, I think, was the one that hurt the most. But standing,
So they ended up that you lost that client over that, or did you get to recover?
Yeah, we smoothed it over, but it was just, again, like at that moment where I'm in this chemical induced environment and I'm stressed out. I'm, incorporating this new equipment that takes on a lot of responsibility. And, I wasn't an owner anymore, to be quite honest, and working like one. And that's how I've always worked, it was my heart on the sleeve. And so I told Will, like, hey, I'm gonna take off, but I'm gonna finish my projects. And I gave him 3 months time, and I did. I finished all my work, and I remember it was July 15th was my end date. And I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 20 years. And at that time, my sensei sent out an email to everybody that he needed help at the gym July 15th, the day that I was quitting, or stop working. And so I was like, well, this is a sign. I'll help him out. And so I helped him part-time, signing up new clients. I built him a little retail store, and we started doing more merchandise and gis and shirts and rash guards. Helped him, pretty much triple his business really quick within like a year and a half. And it was right in that year when Kevin came to me and his brother, Max, and basically said, I want to start a licensed cannabis manufacturing company. And, I should back up, but Kevin's brother, Max, and I were both in the pool industry together, and we had both sold that business together. And so the 2 years for both of us were up, and we were free to start a new business, per se. And so that's what we went after. And I convinced my dad to buy a building in Long Beach. And that was the building that we went after to permit. In 2017, we got the building and we started permitting it. And I also had just had my first kid that year.
Putting it all on the line. There you go.
Yeah. So it was a lot. And, it took us a year to where we could even make money and start paying ourselves. And then once we had a product that was making some money, we started reinvesting. Again, I think that's just part of the struggle. You sometimes get over your skis, and at that time in 2019, we had kind of a downturn in our market, and we had to stop paying ourselves again and keep paying all our employees at that time. Thankfully we did. We persevered through all that, and here we are, 2026, and we've got some really cool products, and I'm really excited, of what's about to come too, because we're just getting better at what we're doing.
I think it's the most exciting piece is this industry. Like I work in all aspects of it, all the categories and stuff like that. And most of my history obviously is with the beer industry. I started out in the hemp space in 2019. So I've been in it for a decent amount of time now. But one of the things I want to connect with you on, also with the baby on the way, is I started this business in 2008. And then I was booking bands and stuff like that. But I really, really get into the risk investment of the business until 2010. And it was right when my ex-wife and I found out we were having the first child. And so I feel you on that. And now she's 15 years old, and she's lived a whole life where I've been doing this. But at that moment, that shit was fucking scary. Where it's it was the same moment where she's pregnant, baby's coming, and then I'm going to quit my day job and start this business. And thankfully I'm still in it, you know what I mean? And 17, 16 years later. So
yeah, it adds a layer of complexity for sure.
Yeah, it puts a lot of stress in there. But let's talk a little bit about, like you said, about the industry and stuff like that. You're doing incredible stuff behind the scenes, and you're bringing consistency into a volatile market. No matter where it is, it's volatile in the sense that consumer demand's shifting every day. The regulatory bullshit that we're dealing with from a federal level as well as state by state. But you guys are you're a consistent feature in it, because irrelevant of what's going on, you're providing that service on a consistent level. What's it from your perspective? It's probably similar to mine from the service end of things, as far as what's going on and what are the opportunities that maybe people are missing as far as what's going on right now?
Well, for what specific?
Yeah, I guess that was a loaded question. Yeah, let's keep it specifically with hemp beverages just for this, because that seems to be where that part is with things. So where do you see the future of where that is, and kind of some opportunities that people are missing that you guys be able to support them in their innovations and such?
Yeah, I mean, hemp, I think anybody that's in that market knows, with the recent passing of that bill from Congress, it's supposedly put the kibosh on that come November, which is a bummer, because, on our side, there's a lot of momentum, especially with companies like Bevmo and Total Wine and even Target starting to carry a lot of these hemp beverages. We had a lot of irons in the fire, and since that bill passed, a lot of that's been put on ice, to be quite honest. With that being said, I think there's a lot of hope on the horizon for bill to be passed, to where they delay that decision for maybe 3 years and come up with a better plan, because it will be detrimental. 100,000 people are going to get lose their jobs, and there's a lot of money in that market. It'd be a shame for them to just erase all that momentum. And then outside of that, you see other states like Illinois just said, hey, we're not abiding to that law. We're going to keep hemp drinks the way it's been, and screw that. And I think you'll probably see more of that as it actually comes to fruition. States are going to be like, whoa, we got to figure something out for our citizens. But I'm hopeful, there'll be some common sense laws that'll come into play and hopefully change all that. So outside of the legal thing, I would say the biggest challenge is, like you mentioned, supply chain consistency. It's kind of, when we first started seeing the hemp come online, I think a kilo of CBD was $10,000. And now that same kilo is $50 or something like that.
I used to sell the biomass and all the other stuff, and it was the prices were insane, and now it's just make it.
I know, it's I don't even know how they're making it.
It costs more to ship it than it does to buy it.
Right. they got to just be getting all the biomass for free, and the economics make a lot of sense. But so finding a consistent supply chain on that realm, if you have it, I would keep it, because it's always ebb and flowing. I feel like on that end, it's either it's available or it's not, and depending on if it's frothy in the market or it's not, you really got to make sure you lock down your supply chain, and find a really good, consistent supply of material.
I want to touch on that for one sec before we jump to the other one, is because I talk a lot with brands about scaling, and I think having you on this, I want to dive a little deeper into exactly what you just said. A lot of these brands are used to mom and pop sales or liquor store sales and things like that, where consistency isn't always empirical. Mm-hmm. And when I want to talk a little bit about, one thing I talk on my newsletter and on the show is about when you get to scale and you're rolling out 500 stores in convenience chain, or you're rolling out, 700 stores in the grocery chain. If you don't have that consistency, and then on the backside from a capacity and production standpoint, if all of a sudden you're in the middle of that and your supply chain goes, oh, this is too much. Like, let's talk about that a little bit, as far as like how you guys bring that to the table, where it's like the scale is there, the consistency is there. And I think this is going to be the wake up call a year, 2, 3 years down the road, as the law does change. And I personally, we have a lobbyist with our company in Pennsylvania. We're getting ready. We already started in the fall. We're building a bill exactly aligned with alcohol and carves out hemp beverages. And then later down the road, a couple of years from now, it'll be edibles and flour. But right now, we're just starting out with the beverages, because we were told directly face to face with the lawmakers that's the only way it's going to get through in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. We're about 6 to 8 months away from that law getting passed and becoming part of the bill. And in Pennsylvania, we have a unique experience, unlike other states, because the state needs the revenue. So unlike the other states where this is getting pushed aside, our state is locked in to the point where the governor is going to be championing it in a few little while and stuff like that. So we're a little bit different and unique in Pennsylvania. But what I want to get back to is, when these chains and groceries, as we're starting to see with Target, Sprouts, all the Circle K, they're picking the biggest brands. Mm-hmm. So kind of let's talk a little bit about, let's give a heads up to the startup brands and the small guys that all of a sudden want to pitch to Albertsons and they want to pitch to HEB. What that means is from a supply chain level.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important, right? As a manufacturer from the cannabis side, it trickles down all the way from the farm to the manufacturer to the buyers, right? And I think ensuring that you have somebody that can scale with your business is important, because you might have a really bougie boutique extract today, but can it go nationwide? How high can you scale that product? And so it's important to find good suppliers, manufacturers that can create those extracts that you need for your product, and scale with your business, and also grow with you too, because you might be paying a lot as a young company, and then once you mature, you're going to be expecting economics of scale, right, and better pricing. So ensuring that you trust your partners to grow with your brand is important. And I think sometimes that takes taking a little bit of a hit in the beginning to know that they're going to grow with you in the long run. And we see that personally on our side. We're just one ingredient sometimes in a product, but we work with so many different brands and co-packers, and we're always trying to connect the dots and help our clients grow, because if they grow, we grow. And so it's a teamwork effort. And I've always believed that, you do good by people, they'll do good by you. So yeah, it's my biggest piece of advice there.
No, and it's the best. And you guys work in the alcohol industry as well, and everything's cut through it. And it's the trust needs to be there across the board with all this stuff, because not only is it a regulated industry, but it's a constantly attacked industry. So everybody's cautious, everybody's paranoid. And I think that's the number one thing, is like building relationships with trust and scale. And I think that's the only way this goes, because mom and pops are really important. I live and die by them. But those chains are what really is going to make building or businesses generational and built for 10 to 15 years from now.
100%. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
And that changes everything. That changes the mindset as an operator and a founder too. And I think that's a challenge that a lot of founders are seeing right now, is going from the hobby to the small business to the chain activation and representation.
No doubt.
So let's talk a little bit about, we got a couple more minutes here. I want to talk about partnerships. I was very interested to hear you just said you sold your business with your partner, and then is he also in this business as well?
Yeah, he is. He's not active anymore, but yeah, I mean we've been partners in a sense for over 20 years. So yeah.
What are some good tips there? And most people ask that about married couples, but I want to know about business partners. How does it work? What are the tricks and tips? Just trust?
Yeah. A lot of communication, you know, you got to be trusting of your partners for sure. It is a marriage, and you know, when times are good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. And you know, you gotta be able to roll with the punches a little bit and treat people with respect at the end of the day. You know, to treat people the way you want to be treated. It's kind of how I live my life.
It's how we were raised, and unfortunately, it has to be said because we don't always do that as a society. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, totally.
And in closing, are there any things you want to plug or anything coming up in 2026 that we can kind of get on the radar for everybody?
Um, I mean, yeah, if you're in the beer industry, you know, definitely the quantum. We do a lot of toll processing there as well. Um, you know, when you quantum toll your hops with us, you know, we're seeing on average we can 5x your flavor and aroma. So you give us, you know, 500 pounds of hop pellets, and we'll give you back 2,500 pounds of hop aroma equivalent.
Holy hell.
Yeah, so a lot of efficiencies there. And like I said, we're not just seeing efficiencies on aroma, but also, you know, there's less biomass in your brewing process. And the more hops and biomass you add into your brewing process, the more beer gets soaked into that biomass. So you're on average, we're seeing brewers are able to make 30% more beer when they use our quantum extracts. And then we mentioned the shelf stability, right? There's less of the chlorophyll and the fats and the lipids in your finished product. So what we're seeing on average is people's beers surviving 2, 3, 4 months more than they should.
Wow. Wow. So you're doubling shelf life for certain products.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, IPAs, they don't survive very long. So anything you do to help that is, I think, a huge advantage. And yeah, the Quantum's great. We're coming out with a lot of new Sky Farm flavors. You know, again, these are all TTB-approved. Just they represent the freshest and the most perfect version of a fruit flavor and aroma. So it's got, you know, none of that cooked off flavor that can sometimes happen in when you're making beer. And you know, there's none of that like perfumey, potpourri, floral.
And no biscuits here.
Yeah. It's just true to type, really in your face flavors. And then, you know, again, I mentioned those Omni profiles. If you have a strain of hops that you love this year, you could send that to us and we'll analyze that. And like I said, we can Jurassic Park it forever. And so that'll be your custom SKU. And also with the Omni, we can even add in like Sky Farm flavors if you want like a peach or a pineapple citra. Like we can make a custom Omni hop profile for you. And that's kind of cool because also on the hemp side, you know, there's a lot of hot waters that are coming out. I think there's not enough people doing that. You know, it's a category of its own, but on the hemp side, I haven't really seen that. And
I have yet to see a hemp infused hydration product. That's for sure.
Yeah. And you know, we're always innovating. We have a really cool team of flavorists and chemists, and so if there's ever a product you're thinking of or a flavor you're thinking of, I guarantee you we're already kind of scratching our heads on how to develop that if we haven't already. So we kind of think of ourselves as like an application arm for our customers, and we can build an SOP around any product you can think of. And it could be a beverage, it could be a tincture, it could be a yummy, a powder. We do a lot of powder flavors as well. even a vape, right? And we do that all the time as well. So a lot of different things we touch on. I would say, we're really good at like tropical notes. Cannabis has a lot of tropical flavors. Hops have a lot of tropical flavors. And we've been really good at dissecting what makes those flavors come out through those products and recreating them. And so if you're looking for something tropical and unique, I think we're definitely, the ones to talk to.
Perfect, Jack. Well, hey, I'll close out, and I want to first off say thank you for coming on. There's no scripts and there's no agenda, and we met about stuff irrelevant of this prior to, and I want to thank you for coming in, because it takes a lot of courage to come on something in today's world where you don't know what's going to happen, and there's a lot of gotcha type people out there, and that's not what this is. And I really appreciate you trusting me in this experience and being able to share your story and your business, and super fascinating stuff. Absolutely. And I'm really excited. I want everybody to check out abstraxtech.com. It'll be right here in the description below. And just to, overall to everybody, just a reminder, it's 2026. Don't be an asshole. Look at your friend, look at your friends, ask them how they're doing, actually mean it. Hold a door for a stranger, whether it's a dude or a woman or whatever, it doesn't matter. And just be nice out there. And it's really, I want to thank you, Jack, for coming out and trusting me. And I want people to understand that this is how strangers meet. This is how you make friends, and this is how you make positive change in the world, by being vulnerable and open with each other and just having a conversation and finding common ground. So thanks again, Jack. I really appreciate it.
Cheers to that, Nate, and appreciate you bringing on me onto your platform, and for you to have the courage to build this platform. I think it's definitely needed, behind the scenes for these companies and these brands. There's nothing else that I've seen like this. So kudos to you for doing that, and I appreciate you having me on. And I hope to continue the conversation maybe one day soon.
Oh, we will. You're going to see a LinkedIn message. I'm going to introduce you to 2 suppliers as you were talking that were in my head that I need to introduce you to. So I'll send you 2 leads right off the bat.
All right.
Sounds good, buddy. Well, hey, you enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe out there, and I'll send you an email when this one's going to drop.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Hey, take care, buddy.